Good morning, good morning. I have a question for you. I'm wondering, is your brain wired right now to keep you sick and keep your symptoms flaring? I want you to really consider this because I just caught myself last week in an old brain wiring that caused me to go whoa and really totally rejig the rest of my year. And I'm going to share that story with you, but it's also a really common thing that I see holding people back when they're trying to fix their gut. And so I wanted to give you 3 tangible things that I want you to be looking out for to be able to tell if your brain is maybe going into overdrive and instead of keeping you safe is keeping you sick. So let's dive into this. The thing that, hey Maria, I see you guys in comments, hello, hello. The thing that I want you guys to understand about your brain first and foremost is that it's actually designed to keep you safe. Your brain is wired to keep you safe, but if we're not careful, it can go into overdrive and then it can become wired, and that the thing that it's doing is really keeping us sick. And so when we say the brain is wired to keep us safe, what we mean by that is it's kind of like that safety net. It's like a double check, right? It's meant to instill a healthy amount of fear and caution, and it's meant to protect you, to keep you out of harm's way. And so a good example of this is if we think about if you were to go skydiving, for example, that brain wiring for safety has you go, is this a good idea? Is it safe for me to be jumping out of an airplane right now? And again, it's like that double check to be like, no, we're good. We have safety equipment and we've got, a parachute or whatever that they're going to shoot out, and I've got a guide and everything's going to be okay, hopefully, right? And so that is your healthy brain's baseline, right? Is the brain being wired for safety. But if we're not careful, it can totally get out of control on us. And when we're dealing with chronic health issues and chronic gut symptoms, this is a common place where a lot of us can get stuck and get sucked in. And in our desperation to feel normal, to not be in pain, to be able to, function day to day, eat foods like everyone else, be able to go to work, fit in your pants without bursting a button, not having to wear baggy clothes, not having to fear like where bathrooms are and again, what to eat. When we're exposed to this persistent discomfort, we can really get stuck into the brain starting to get wired for sickness. And a big reason why this happens is because part of, again, our brain wiring us for safety is that humans in general, we really suck at being in discomfort. We don't like to be uncomfortable. And so our brains are, along with being wired for safety, they're wired for seeking pleasure. We want to feel comfortable and like we get the warm and fuzzies, right? And whenever we don't feel that way, it can really stir things up for us. And so again, that desperation of all those symptoms, we can get into some habits that are really harmful that can create other brain pathways that keep your brain hyper fixated on your symptoms. And then we're not just having to heal the damage, deficiencies, and infections in your gut. Now we're really having to work on rewiring the brain and rewiring your relationship to food, to your body, to the symptoms of your body, which is a communication channel from your body. And so some things that I want you to watch out for just in general here before we dive into the 3 signs is that some of the habits that we can get into when we're in persistent symptoms and we're kind of desperate for relief is the late night Google sessions, right? We've all been there. And it's not even just late night, but I know we've all had those moments where it's like you've had a particularly shitty day and you climb in bed and you're like, hell no, not tomorrow. I can't do this anymore. Tonight's the night I'm going to find the answer on Google. And you go into the depths of the interwebs and you come at the other end still feeling pretty hopeless. Or you end up like, oh, I'm going to try this another random supplement, right? But we get into these Google sessions where we just we're hyper fixated on the symptoms and trying to fix it. This real fix it mentality, right? But we can also get into obsessive thinking. And so even when you're not maybe Googling, you're constantly spinning on, you wake up and then you do these body scans like, is today going to be a good gut day or a bad gut day? Right? These are all habits that keep your brain's attention going back to your symptoms continually, going back to feeding into focus on the symptoms. And the reason why this becomes problematic is because, again, you're actually carving more pathways to tell the brain we need to keep focusing on these pain points. We need to keep hyperfixating. They're dangerous, they're bad. And although they're uncomfortable and that is valid, the whole point of healing is actually to move towards how you want to feel. And so we actually need to be getting the brain wired and focused on the outcome you're trying to create. And this is where it gets kind of all mixed up and backwards. So, we don't want to keep reinforcing the very thing that you don't want, right? We don't want to keep reinforcing focus on symptoms. What has become really interesting in the healing space is that it has been shown time and time again that pain, especially, there's physical pain, but then there's also this brain response, this cellular memory response in the body that can occur from a brain standpoint or from a pain standpoint. And so what that means is that you're not actually always feeling physical pain. Sometimes that pain is a memory response. It's your brain trying to protect you, to say, hey, remember this thing. We don't want to, like, this is a bad thing. But it's that response that's coming, not because there's a physical problem any longer, but because the brain is in this old signaling pathway. And so this is why when we're healing the physical body, we have to make sure that the brain is keeping pace. And what we talk about with our clients in our Love and Trust Your Guts program is this is a big reason why celebrating wins, even micro wins, is so important, because it's part of that integration of teaching your brain and pointing to the brain saying, hey brain, look at this. You know, my bloating might not be completely gone, but I've gone from an 8 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10. And that's pretty fucking cool, right? And like, hey brain, you know, I might not be able to, you know, I don't know, eat all the foods that I used to before, but look, I just ate a cinnamon bun. That was actually one of our clients' wins, right? She finally was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna eat the thing, and had no reaction, right? And so this is, we have to get the brain acknowledging and seeing the wins so that it starts to redirect away from the symptoms. Otherwise, your brain is going to continue always looking for symptoms. So let's start talking about the three core signs that really show that, hey, your brain might actually be wired for these symptoms and this sickness, and that you need to do some brain work alongside working on your physical body. I'm going to share some stories along the way here. But the first one that you need to really look out for is when your diagnosis has become your identity. And this is really difficult for people to see when they're in it. But I find that the number one sign when I can tell someone has gotten attached to this diagnosis and it's become their identity is they become really defensive about it. And what I mean by defensive is that when we start to kind of break away and offer a different perspective on what might be causing their symptoms, and it might not just be, oh, you've got IBS, or you've got gastritis, or you've got GERD, or you've got diverticulitis, or Crohn's, or colitis. I find when people get really attached to their diagnosis, they defend it because their identity has become wrapped up in it. And so that is a really big piece that needs to happen to move away from your symptoms. Is you need to become unattached to these diagnoses that you've been given. And I almost say, like, in a sense, ignore them, forget about them. And I'm not saying forget about your symptoms or forget about your health. I'm saying stop telling yourself that you have these things, because every time you tell yourself you have these things, you are wiring your brain to be like, listen, body and brain, yes, we have this thing. We have this lifelong chronic health issue we're not going to be able to get rid of. And that is not going to help your case, right? What we need to be reinforcing to the brain is I am healing every day. What does it look like for me to heal every day? What are some of the points of evidence that I'm seeing in my life that are showing me that I'm healing every single day? And it's not just about, the term healing, but like what are some of the things that you're doing, right? For me, it was a tangible thing that I referenced was my walking. If you're new here or you haven't heard part of my journey, after living in mold and having mold exposure, it ignited a dormant Lyme infection in me and a whole slew of gut infections that really knocked me on my ass and made it extremely difficult to walk. There was a period of time where I wasn't really able to walk. I was in such excruciating feet pain because of this Lyme Bartonella infection. And so as I was healing these gut infections and Lyme disease and this mold exposure, I wasn't focusing on those things. In fact, while I was healing, no one knew none of my community knew I was going through that. I never shared that on here with you guys because I didn't want to give these diagnoses any attention, right? There were other diagnoses that I would also receive that I've never spoken to anyone because I was so committed to not letting them become a part of my identity. I was so committed to not letting them become a part of my journey that I just did not even speak them into existence. I acknowledged the symptoms in my physical experience, right? Of feet pain and bloat and abdominal pain and severe brain fog, severe memory issues, severe light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, irritability, skin issues, all kinds of stuff going on, right? Histamine reactions, horrible acid reflux. I acknowledged the symptoms. And then I got into testing with functional testing to figure out what damage, deficiencies, or infections are present here. And I worked on removing and fixing those. And so I never let those diagnoses become a part of my story. It never became I'm Alyssa and I have Lyme disease. I'm still very careful about how I talk about it. It's difficult for me to even say Lyme disease. I often will just flippantly refer to it as Lyme because I'm so committed to just not letting that become a part of my story, right? I'm most committed to hiking mountains now, right? That's where my focus is. And so you must not let your identity become your symptom. Oh my goodness, your diagnosis become your identity. And so if you find yourself speaking about your symptoms and your sickness and your diagnosis all the time to people, stop that, right? Find the safe places where you can be heard and supported by people who understand you and are able to help you. But don't go to the crevices of the earth like your coworkers and sometimes often even your family with people who really don't know how to help you get out of it. They're going to just be the places where you're going to vent and ruminate and get all stuck in your stuff in this sickness, okay? We must keep it productive. So yes, find a place to be seen and heard and process and speak these things out into reality, but let it be in places where there's someone who can help facilitate healing in that processing for you so that, again, it's not becoming another brain pathway. Okay, the second thing is your stories continue to support the outcome you don't want. Okay, this is another big sign that you've got brain pathways, brain wiring that's wired for sickness. And I'm going to share a real tangible story because we all have this in some sense. And I actually caught myself in this habit last week. Okay, so what I mean by your stories are continuing to support the outcome that you don't want to create is that we all have these stories. Right? It could be that my life is hard. It could be I can't eat anything. It can be healing's not really possible for me. And often these stories are things that we're not super aware of. They're often on an unconscious level, and it takes a bit to kind of bring them up and be like, oh, holy shit, I didn't realize I was feeling that deep down. Some other things that we often uncover is whether people feel that they're deserving of love or health or peace or whatever. And those are, core beliefs that we often learn in our childhood or through traumatic events that play out in our life, right? And they really are the thing that drive our decisions. And so I wanted to share a really powerful one that I've been aware of, that I have this story that I've had to really work through and continue working on. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. My parents were both self-employed, and work ethic was really instilled in me to work hard. I was constantly in some sort of lesson, singing lessons, piano lessons, art lessons, soccer. I was very, very fortunate to have a lot of those experiences as a child. But also, when we weren't there, we were at the shop and helping mom and dad with the business. And so work ethic was really, really instilled. And I distinctly remember being told that life is hard. And so this has been a story that I've carried around that I've really had to work on unpacking. And it crept up on me last week. And so what I realized is that I have still been holding this story that life is in fact hard. And being really sick really reinforced that story for me. And so what I came to really recognize is I had set this really big goal recently. There's an event called 29029. It's like a retreat event. And what they do is they rent a mountain, and 29029 represents the height of Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on Earth, and 29,029 feet. And so what they do is they rent a mountain, and they determine how many laps up that mountain you need to hike to have hiked the equivalent of 29,029 feet. And so I was really gearing up to start training for this. I was going to register for this event. It was going to be happening next August. I was like, really, we're doing it. For context, it was only a short, year and a half, 2 years ago that I was in a stage of not being able to walk. I was in such excruciating pain. Where I'm at today is my right foot is 100% pain-free, which is amazing. My left foot is still a little sticky, and I still have some flares with that foot. And so it's not like I'm 100%, still healing. And so to go from 0 to 100 was a really interesting thing. I started to catch myself like, isn't that interesting? Why are we going from 0 to 100? I just hiked my very first mountain this past July. Why are we going from an 800 meter mountain to hiking 29,029 feet? And the one little tidbit here is you have 36 hours to hike it. And so I really had to sit and reflect on that. Like, I started to realize I'm feeling really anxious about this. It's keeping me up at night. I'm literally dreaming at night about hiking this fucking mountain. And what's going on here? And then I started to realize, well, every single day I am working towards being pain-free. The last 3 years, I have been actively seeking pain-free. Every single day and almost every single moment, I have been in excruciating pain for the last 3 years. It started to break up again. Now my right foot's good, and left foot, I have moments of pain-free, which is great. Isn't it interesting that while I'm actively moving away from pain, I was choosing something like this 29029 event where I'm going to hike for 36 hours straight, 29,029 feet, and there's no way you come out of that not feeling pain. Like that experience is, the point of it is to meet your edge, to experience pain and see what you're fucking made of, which excites the hell out of me, and we'll talk more about that. But isn't that interesting? While I'm actively trying to move away from pain, I'm thrusting myself into pain. And I really had to ask myself, why are you doing that, Alyssa? And I realized it was because as my feet have continued to heal and I'm in less and less pain and life is feeling less and less hard, I was creating another version of hard for myself. And this is the power of your stories. This is the power of stories, guys. And that's why you have to really look at, in your sickness, in your symptoms, in all of the chronic gut stuff that you've experienced, what stories have you developed? Like, do you have a story that says, I don't really believe it's possible for me to heal, but like, if I could just get like a little bit better so I can like function, that would be great, right? Do you have any stories that you're telling yourself that you can't have garlic and you can't have onions and you can't eat gluten, or you can't have this food, or you can't travel because your gut won't behave? Like, what stories are you telling yourself? What rules have you created as a result of your gut? And really confront the fuck out of those stories, because they are going to be the thing that holds you back. Your body is designed to heal. When it has the support that it needs, it will heal. When you address the damage, deficiencies, and infections, and you get your nervous system under control, it will heal with or without you. But if you have these underlying stories, then you will stay in habits and make decisions that will continue yielding more of what you don't want. Right? So isn't it interesting, while my physical body was healing, because I still had this story of life is hard, that I literally was creating pain and hard in a whole other way in my life. And so while I'm absolutely still going to hike the 29029 event at some point, I intentionally chose not to register this year because I didn't want to go into that incredible event with that kind of intention or energy. I want to go into it from a really pure place when it's time, when it's the right time for me. And so really, really look at those stories, guys. They will keep bringing you back to a path that will create more symptoms. So look at your relationships, look at your career, look at your inner dialogue, look at your like relationship with not just people, but food and everything around you. And really assess, where am I feeling icky in my life? Where am I feeling anxious? Where am I feeling uncomfortable? And these are like a light being shone onto areas that you need to go and explore. And there may be some underlying brain wiring or rewiring that you might like to look at that could really support your healing. Okay? The third thing that I want you to consider here is if you are a super like self-critical person, if you are, I mean, in a sense, we are all our worst critic, right? But I find there's a subset of people who are extra critical on themselves. And I find these individuals are usually the cycle breakers in their family. And so if you're kind of like the black sheep of the family or the cycle breaker, you've like really, seen the opportunity for healing and seen the areas of, that generational healing throughout your family that may not have been tapped into by your parents or your grandparents or your great-great-grandparents, but you've really been the person that started to dig into some of that personal development and healing beyond that. I find those individuals in their healing become, I'm going to say extra hard on themselves, right? Some of it is that they've gotten the brunt of the family being hard on them for being the cycle breaker, for being the black sheep, for, really disrupting the dysfunction of the family. When people are deeply stuck in that, they don't like when family members come and disrupt that, right? And so when you're the person who's breaking that stuff up and you're on this personal development journey, I find that those individuals really get hard on themselves, right? And they get really self-critical, and that self-criticism is really not helpful, right? And so there's this element of not feeling enough, and that feeling of like never being enough often leads to these individuals constantly ripping the rug out from under themselves and setting bigger goals, or ripping the rug out from under themselves and, raising the bar and always making it feel like you have to do something even bigger and better. And the way that I see this present when people are healing is that their symptoms, let's say they come in and they'll say, okay, like I've got this like constipation and bloating, right? Or I've got diarrhea and acid reflux. And we get their symptoms totally wrapped up under control. Their symptoms go away. And then they come back and they'll say, yeah, but like I've got this itchy ear. Or yeah, but like I've got this like rash on my skin. Or yeah, but I get these pimples on my face or this acne on my face. And we see this a lot. This, original health goal that gets accomplished. And then when the brain is wired for more symptoms, more sickness, it automatically goes back and self-criticizes and goes and nitpicks and finds another problem. And this really roots back to not feeling enough. And again, it's usually those cycle breakers or, cycle breakers that I see in families who've really experienced this through a lot of external criticism that turns into internal criticism. So I really want you guys to also be looking out for, are you really, really hard on yourself? Do you give grace to like all the people around you, but you don't feel like you get any grace? Like it's totally okay if, someone else doesn't get something done, but if you don't get everything done perfectly, that's not okay. Right? It's okay if someone else shows up late, but if you show up late, that's not okay, right? Like these double standards where you allow other people grace, but you're not giving yourself any. These are all examples of us really doubling down on creating this brain wiring that is only going to ultimately, what it strips back to, create more internal stress for you. It's creating these standards that are impossible for you to live up to. And it's keeping your brain focused on the negative. And I want you to know I absolutely understand what it feels like because I have been there and I am still healing. Everyone is still healing because there is no healing destination. It's always evolving and growing. But I can say firsthand, having been through the depths of chronic illness, that it is fucking hard. And I can say, like, coming out the other end, I went in a real positive person, and it's really difficult when you're in daily chronic discomfort for your brain to not continue focusing, for your mind to not continue focusing on it. So I just want to acknowledge that this work, it's easier said than done, but it's not about being perfect, and it's not about your brain or you never ever thinking about your symptoms or never ever trying to find solutions. It's really about acknowledging the feeling. Yes, body, okay, yes, I'm feeling anxious. Yes, I'm in this pain. Like, yes, I'm in this discomfort. Gosh, I so badly want to feel better. And I believe it's possible for me to heal. Or I'm working on believing it's possible for me to heal. Or every day I believe my body is working to heal, right? And really then acknowledging the negative feelings that are coming up, if you will, and then redirecting your brain and saying, okay, but brain, we got to go over here now. Remember, I want to hike that mountain, right? And so there's a distinct shift that happens for people when they start to focus on where they want to go. That really changes everything. And when I first decided that I was going to become a mountain hiker, which was about a year ago, actually, a year and a couple of months, I was still in daily pain in both of my feet. I had no idea how I was going to do it. Like, we were booking flights for the trip for us to go hike my first mountain, and I had no clue how I was going to do it. And even right up until a week before we flew to go and hike this mountain, I was in a flare. And I was in a lot of pain all day. And yet it all came together. What really shifted was that I was no longer focusing on the pain. I was no longer focusing on killing the Lyme or killing the infections or forcing inflammation down. Instead, what I was focusing on was like embodying the identity of who I wanted to be. This healthy, vibrant, alive mountain hiker. And so I started, instead, I was Googling what you need to pack in your backpack when you go hiking. And are there bears in Newfoundland? Do I need to figure out bear spray? And what do I need to wear? And what do I need to bring food wise? And how much water do I need? And like clothes and like hiking clothes. And like that is what totally took over me. Was every part of me was no longer focusing on the sensations and the symptoms and the all of the emotions of it. All of a sudden, my brain was in hiker mode. And that's the place that you guys really need to get to. It doesn't have to be hiking per se, but you have to have a clearer vision of how you want to feel than what you're in right now. Because the truth is that the person who got you here, the person that you were, that got you the results that you have right now, the symptoms that you have right now, is not going to be the person that's going to get you to where you want to go. That person, that's not the healed version of you. You are going to need to create a whole new identity, right? All new habits. And that's why when I hear people say, well, when I fix my gut, am I going to be able to go back to eating whatever I want after? That's when I know those people are not really here for true healing. They're not here for health. They're not looking to actually have health in their life. They don't value their health. They're just in pain and they're in discomfort and they're trying to just move away from that discomfort, right? But it's different when there's someone who is seeking out health because they value health for themselves and their family. That's a totally different person. And those are the people that really have sustainable health. Those are the people that really rewire their brains. And those are the people that fix their gut and easily maintain that health afterwards. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys today. This is like a big, deep topic. We could talk like for hours and hours on this. But I woke up this morning and I was doing my morning practice and I just was feeling so called, okay, I got to get on there. We got to talk about this. So anyways, let me know in the comments which part stuck out the most for you, what your biggest takeaway was today, and happy to support in there. Tristan, I see you saying, I've been stuck in a job I hate, and ever since I started, my body started going ape shit. Fucking to that. That is exactly it. This is such a good example here, Tristan. And I see this a lot. It's not just careers, it's relationships. If we are out of alignment, if we're in something we're not meant to be in, it will literally make us sick. And so this is what I'm saying when I say that healing requires an identity shift. It requires big life changes. On a very, physical level, sometimes we have clients who are living in homes with mold and they literally have to move. Sometimes we have clients who are in toxic relationships and they go through a divorce and they leave their partner. And it doesn't always have to look that heavy, but I think many of you deep down in your gut can probably think of a moment in time, or maybe even right now, where you're like, I know this thing isn't for me, but I'm just feeling really scared to make a change. And I want to encourage you that you don't have to make a big, bold, change right on, like, in this second. You don't have to go and quit your job after this. But part of this, as we mentioned, of carving the brain pathways, is don't focus on how much you hate your job and how much it's making you sick. Now focus on where you might want to go. Really put your energy into, even if you don't know what that looks like. There are a lot of people that hate their job, but they have no clue what else they would do. That's okay. That's okay if you're there. But really just putting your energy and focus into exploring what that might look like. Trying on new things, right? Working with a career counselor, or going to job fairs, or checking out, jobs that are being listed, just to see what's out there. But also it's part of, personally going and trying things, because it's when we experience life, it's when we travel, it's when we have new experiences that we awaken a part of ourselves inside that can really help you access what's next for you. So anyways, okay, Teeny is saying, I relate so hard. I'm glad that this is helping, and I hate that you relate to it too. Like in a sense, like, because I know what it means that you relate. So anyways, I'm glad it's been helpful, and I wish you didn't relate. Okay, see here that so you're saying, I'm in pain all the time and can't eat anything without symptoms. Lifelong gut issues and hypersensitivity to sounds, light, food, and touch. Yeah, I get that. There was one, when we first moved into this house, we were just moved out of the mold. Our house, the apartment that my husband and I were in at the time, flooded on the day of our wedding. And so we never went home. We had our wedding and then moved into a hotel room for 6 weeks. And then that kind of prompted us to buy our first house, and here we are. But we needed to do major renos when we first moved in here, and I will never forget, I was in the depths of sickness through renovations. I don't recommend that combination. And my sister, she lives in our basement apartment, and we were going through renovations, completing the apartment for her down there. So she was living upstairs with us for a little bit, and every morning she would wake up and she'd put music on. And she went through a bit of a period there where she was listening to some rock music, and I can't remember which band it was, but it woke me up one morning, and the sound sensitivity was just so intense. It felt like nails on a chalkboard, like clashing pots and pans, like screaming. Like, it was just so intense for my nervous system. I came flying out of my bedroom screaming at her, which is unlike me, but the nervous system response, the brain inflammation, the intensity of everything I was feeling was so crazy intense. So I have a ton of compassion for people in that healing season, because I know that that's not your like true essence. I know that the sounds and the light and the pain and what that makes, how that makes you react and what that makes you feel is, just know you're not crazy, and it's not you. It's the brain inflammation from these infections and toxins. So I just have so much compassion, because I know what that looks like. Tons of doctors and naturopaths, nothing worked. Even tried a hypnotherapy app, but I can't be hypnotized. Gas never lets up, and I can't poop. I take 3 laxatives a night and about 20 supplements a day. It's crazy. I have stress up the wazoo, husband with BPD, father with Parkinson's, auntie with the same issues. I had tumor on the pituitary gland. The reason I can't have kids, she just had surgery on hers, and I live away from all my family. So yeah, I totally hear, and I hope me reading this back and you hearing it back, you can see there's a lot going on here. It's very likely that your nervous system is activated, but also your brain for sure is creating stories here, right? And it makes sense that it happens, right? Look how hard my life is. Look at all this stress. I have all of these odds against me. And I just want you to reframe all this to say, even though I'm experiencing all of these challenges and all of these obstacles, I can and will heal. It is still possible for me. There's still hope for me. Even though I've been to doctors and naturopaths with no luck, it is still possible for me to heal. Because I will tell you firsthand that as a practitioner, there's a lot of naturopaths and doctors who are, I'm going to say, assuming you mean functional doctors, who are still doing what doctors do, which is just managing symptoms, but instead of using drugs, they're using supplements. And they're not getting to the root causes. And so please don't let the limitation of someone's understanding or education or depth of healing approach determine whether your body is able to heal. That's not true, right? When a doctor says, oh, you've got IBS, there's nothing that you can do, you're just going to have to live with this the rest of your life. That is so dead fucking wrong. Like, there's nothing accurate about that. Really what they mean to say is, you've got an irritable gut, you've got gut issues, but I don't know what's causing it, and I don't know how to help you. And so again, don't let their ego or their lack of education or understanding of root cause medicine prevent you from healing. There's always hope for you, always, but you have to believe it too, okay? Okay, Tristan had also said, we find mold in my house from a leak, but doctors keep telling me that mold wouldn't cause this. You guys are going to get me all spicy on a Monday morning. I swear to God. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. This is a whole other talk, but this is where, this is a whole other talk, but I'm just going to say that, yes, Tristan, mold matters. And mold I see as one of the biggest culprits. There's a lot of sick buildings, we call them, or sick homes, mostly because no one understands how to keep a home healthy. Our home has a microbiome just like our gut. And so managing humidity, managing water issues, these are all really important things. Mold creates mycotoxins, which are the toxins that come from mold, and that is the food for infections. And so I really, really encourage you to look into that. I'm happy to support if you need some help with that. Send me a message, but don't write off the mold thing. Like we see typically the people that come to see us, they've been to doctors, multiple naturopaths. I had one client say, I have a naturopath for my other naturopath. I have a naturopath to fill in the blanks from the first naturopath who's not getting all the all the things filled in. Just, so we typically have a lot of clients that come to see us who have tried all the things and nothing seems to be working. But really all that's happened is that big pieces of the puzzle have been missing. They've been deeply stuck in symptom management. And we have many clients who mold was the big missing piece for them. So I'm not suggesting that's the only thing, but I just really want to emphasize, like, your doctor's dead wrong. Okay, so where are we at here? Okay. Teeny's saying, this is behind the scenes. I'm happy. I love my life and I'm holding on to hope. I keep busy. Thank you so much for this. It helped me a lot today. I'm so glad to hear that. And I hear you, right? It's like there's these depths of feeling of despair and loss of hope. And there is still an element of you that is still alive and feels like I am happy, and I do have a lot to be happy about. I relate to that too. It's like I have a supportive husband and family, and we have a home, like a beautiful roof over our head, and like food in the belly, and like our basic human needs are more than met here, where I'm okay. And it's fucking hard, and it's hard, right? So it's okay to feel the and. We just don't want to get too stuck in the it's hard, there's no hope for me. Hey Joanne, I was just thinking about you last week. I love seeing your photography online. You're saying sending lots of love and thank you for sharing. I think about you often. Shoot me an update. Let me know how you're doing. All right, guys, I think that's it for today. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you get rewiring your brain. I hope you know that there's hope for you, and I just never want you to give up, all right? And know that in your brain's working to create safety and protect you, there can be also a balance in also, seeking out a whole new thriving, life, a whole new world of possibilities for you that you may not have considered because your brain may be deeply stuck in just trying to keep you in survival mode. So keep the faith and reach out if you need any support, but we will chat with you guys real soon. All right. Bye, guys.